The cold came first. Not the kind that bites your skin, but the kind that settles inside your bones and starts whispering that maybe you were never meant to be warm again. Calla lay on the stone floor, counting her breath just to prove she still had one. The air smelled of damp earth and rusted chains. A single drip of water fell from the ceiling, steady, cruel, like a clock marking time she no longer wanted. Outside, someone laughed. Not kindly. The sound slid under the door and scraped against her nerves until she wanted to claw at her own ears. She used to laugh like that once, before the cages. Before she learned how quiet a heart can get when nobody believes it's worth saving. Her wrists burned where the iron rubbed her raw. She tried not to move. Afraid the guards upstairs would hear her and remember she still existed, it was safer to be forgotten. In this pack, being seen meant being punished. But tonight felt different. There was a restlessness in the air, a pulse she could feel even through the dirt. The blood moon was rising. She could smell it, the wild edge in the wind, the way every wolf's magic began to hum before the shift. Once she'd loved that feeling. Now it just reminded her that she wasn't part of them anymore. She pressed her palm to her stomach and swallowed hard. Don't think about it. Don't. The ache beneath her ribs wasn't just hunger. It was fear. Fear of what would happen if they found out. Fear of the tiny heartbeat she swore she could sometimes feel under her hand. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming down the stairs. Her heart jumped, slamming against her chest so hard she thought the sound alone might give her away. The lock scraped. She flinched. A thin slice of light cut through the dark as the door opened. Dust hung in the air like smoke. Get up. A guard's voice. Flat. Tired of her. She pushed herself upright, every muscle trembling. The floor left frost prints on her skin. He grabbed her arm and dragged her out. Her bare feet scraped over stone. The hallway smelled of sweat, blood, wet fur, the scent of a pack preparing for celebration. Of course, the blood moon. They'd be feasting while she served them, same as every year. The cursed girl washing dishes, while the rest howled to the goddess who'd clearly forgotten her. When they reached the main hall, the noise hit her like a wall. Music, laughter, the clatter of plates. Gold light from the chandeliers shimmered off the walls, but it couldn't reach her. She stood at the edge of it all, invisible and painfully aware of every heartbeat that wasn't hers. Then she saw him. Alpha Kellen. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of beautiful that hurt to look at, the kind of dangerous that never had to raise a voice. His eyes found hers across the room, and for a moment the world stilled. It felt like lightning had touched her, hot, sudden, alive. Her wolf stirred, startled awake after years of silence. One word echoed through her mind, raw and disbelieving. Mate. Her breath caught. The bond slammed into her so hard her knees almost gave out. She waited for something. Recognition. Mercy. Anything. But Kellen's mouth curved into a cold smile. The goddess really does have a sick sense of humor, he said, loud enough for the whole hall to hear. My mate? This? Laughter rippled through the pack. A few whispers, a few cruel smirks. Calla felt it, the bond twisting, tightening, breaking all at once. Her chest caved in, her lungs turned to glass. Every piece of her that had dared to hope shattered on the spot. Kellen stepped closer. His scent was smoke and cedar and hatred. He leaned down until his breath brushed her ear. You don't belong to me, he said. You don't belong anywhere. Then he turned away, leaving her standing in the middle of the hall, shaking, while the pack watched their broken Omega bleed on the inside. She didn't cry. Not this time. She just stared at the door he'd walked through and made herself a promise she didn't yet believe. If the goddess won't fight for me, I'll fight for myself. Because somewhere deep in the forest, beyond the reach of this pack, something was calling her. A scent she didn't recognize. A heartbeat that didn't belong to a monster. And for the first time in years, the cage inside her cracked. And the alpha who left her to die? He's about to learn what happens when you reject the wrong wolf. Like and subscribe if you're still watching. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Her knees hit the dirt before she could stop them. The world had slowed, warped, like the air itself recoiled from what just happened. The alpha's rejection still echoed through the Blood Moon Hall. My mate? This? The goddess must be broken. Every word struck like a blade. Every laugh from the crowd, a knife twisting deeper. Calla couldn't move. Her wolf howled inside her, clawing, confused, trying to reach the one man she was bound to, the one who just shattered her. She couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred at the edges. Her chest burned like it had caved in, like something had broken so deep inside her it would never heal. This wasn't heartbreak. This was obliteration. Someone shoved past her. Another whisper. Another snicker. She was still on the floor. Still in front of everyone. Still choking on the scent of the only man she'd ever be tied to. Her mate. Her alpha. Her executioner. She should have run. But she stayed frozen, trapped in a moment that felt like it would stretch forever. Then she saw him walking away. Kellen didn't even look back. Not once. He just turned and disappeared through the doors of the great hall like she was already gone. The bond cracked then. Something inside her snapped. Her wolf whimpered. Her stomach turned. Every nerve in her body screamed for something that had already left her behind. The worst part? She still felt pulled to him, even now. That was the curse of it all. The mate bond didn't care about cruelty. It didn't care about betrayal. It just was. She stood, barely. Her legs trembled beneath her, and blood dripped from her palm where her nails had dug in too deep. The world blurred, but not from tears, from rage, from shame, from the weight of finally understanding what her place in this pack truly was. Nowhere. She stumbled out of the hall, back into the cold, empty hallway of the servants' wing. No one followed. No one stopped her, not even to gloat. Later, she sat on the edge of her cot, hands shaking, stomach churning, her wolf silent. Why me? Why did the goddess choose him for me? She didn't know, but she knew this much. She would never survive here. Not after this. Not after being seen and rejected in front of the entire pack. Not with the secret growing inside her. The one no one could ever know about. The fire was gone from her now. Just ashes. Just silence. Just that pull in her chest that wouldn't leave. Even rejected, she still felt him. That was the cruel part of a bond this deep. You could be broken and still want the one who shattered you. But somewhere, past the walls, past the borders, past the cold, a different pull whispered, not strong, not like the bond, but steady, warm, like something was waiting out there, watching. And for the first time she wondered, what if this wasn't the end? What if this rejection was just the beginning of something else entirely? If you're still watching, like right now, because she hasn't even run yet, and when she does, the alpha who left her bleeding on the floor won't know what hit him. She didn't sleep, not even for a second. The rejection haunted her bones. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him walking away. Kellen's back turned, his voice mocking. The crowd laughing. And worse, that unbearable pull in her chest. The mate bond, frayed and bleeding, but still there, still tethered, like a ghost hand pulling at her heart every time he was near. Calla sat on the floor, knees to her chest, arms wrapped around herself, like she could keep what was left of her soul from spilling out. She'd felt pain before. She'd been starved, beaten, blamed. But this was different. This was final. The sun hadn't even risen, but her choice already had. She had to go. There was nothing left for her in Silveridge, not now, not ever. She moved like a shadow through the servants' wing. No one looked her way. No one cared. She didn't exist to them anymore, not even worth kicking. Good. That made it easier. She crept back to her room, a cell in all but name. Cracked window, thin blanket, broken lock. 4 years of punishment stacked in a space no bigger than a closet. She grabbed the envelope from under the floorboard. It had one thing inside, a name. Bane Matthews, the alpha of the Blackstone Pack. She'd never met him, only exchanged 3 letters. But his words had been kind, curious, gentle. That alone made him dangerous. No one in her life had ever offered kindness without a cost. Still, she held on to those letters like they were prayers. Her hands trembled as she packed. She didn't have much. A threadbare hoodie, 2 pieces of stale bread, and the old necklace her mother had given her, hidden in a crack in the wall since the night they died. She paused, fingers hovering over her stomach. It wasn't showing. Not yet. But she could feel it now. A tiny flicker of life. A heartbeat inside her own. "You're not just leaving for you anymore," her wolf whispered. "You're leaving for us." She left 2 letters on her bed. One for the pack, one for him. Kellen wouldn't read it. He probably wouldn't even notice she was gone. But if he ever did, he'd know. She waited until the guards rotated at dawn, watched them from the kitchen window, counted the steps, timed the gaps. It had to be fast, quiet, clean. If they caught her, no. She didn't have room for if. She moved, across the yard, past the alpha wing, through the tree line behind the training ring. Branches scratched her arms. Mud soaked her feet. But she didn't stop, didn't look back. Not once. The border was close. She could feel it, the way the pack bond stretched thinner with every step, like a rope fraying with each breath. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might tear itself out of her chest. Her legs burned. Her lungs begged. Still, she ran. The first howl shattered the silence behind her. They'd noticed. The hunt had started. She pushed harder, feet barely touching the ground. Her wolf surged, giving what little strength she had left. And then she crossed. A jolt, a shift. Like a weight snapped free from her shoulders. The pack bond broke, and for the first time in years, she felt free. She collapsed on the other side of the tree line, gasping, sobbing, laughing, her body giving out. But she'd made it. Silveridge was behind her. Everything else? Unknown. But maybe that was the point. And somewhere not far from the trees, someone had caught her scent, and he was already walking toward it. She woke with dirt in her mouth and blood on her tongue. Leaves clung to her hair. Her hoodie was torn. Something sharp was embedded in her palm. But she was breathing. She was alive, and she was over the border. The trees here felt different, taller, quieter, more ancient, like they were watching her. The wind didn't bite. The shadows didn't press down. She could smell pine and rain and something else. Something new. Something that made her wolf lift its head and listen. Calla pushed herself up. Her legs buckled, but she stayed standing. The world spun. Her stomach twisted. Her ribs screamed. Still, she stood. She had no idea how far Blackstone's territory stretched. No idea if the Alpha would actually answer her letter. She just knew she had nowhere else to go. A twig snapped behind her. She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Not a rogue, not a Silver Ridge wolf. This scent was clean. Earth and smoke. Alpha. Her wolf stilled. "You're trespassing." The voice was calm, deep, measured. Calla turned. A man stepped from the trees, dressed in black, broad-shouldered. Golden eyes locked on her like a predator sizing up prey. Alpha, no doubt. Her voice cracked. "I wrote you. Weeks ago. You said..." He tilted his head. "You're Calla Rowan." Not a question. A fact. She nodded once, slowly. "I expected you to come quietly," he said. "Not half dead." Calla swayed. "I didn't have a choice." His eyes dropped to the blood on her shirt, the bruises blooming across her collarbone. The way she winced when she breathed. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, "You're safe now." 2 words, simple, soft, and they broke something in her. She didn't cry, not fully, but her knees gave out. He caught her before she hit the ground. She hated that, being touched, being held, but his arms didn't grip. They steadied, supported, and then she passed out. She came to in a room that didn't smell like fear. Clean cotton sheets, low firelight, the faint scent of cedar and herbs, soft voices behind the door. A woman, a healer maybe. Then, quiet. When the Alpha entered, he didn't announce himself. She felt him before she saw him. Still, she sat up. Instinct. Survival. Stupid habit. "You don't need to do that here," he said. She stared at him. This close, he looked even more dangerous, but not cruel. He set a bowl on the table. Soup. Warm. "You're safe," he repeated. "Eat." Her hands shook as she reached for the spoon. "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. She paused, then nodded. He didn't flinch, didn't pull away, didn't sneer like Kellen had. Instead, "I'll have my healer check on you. We'll get supplies for the pup. Clothes, vitamins." Her throat tightened. "You don't know me," she whispered. "No," he said. "But I know what it looks like when someone barely survives their own pack." She looked at him then, really looked. There was something quiet in his eyes, something cold, but not dead. Like maybe he'd survived something too. Calla didn't say thank you. She didn't trust the words yet. But she ate every bite of the soup, and when he left the room she whispered the name she hadn't dared speak aloud in weeks. Darius. Outside, the wind changed. And back in Silver Ridge, someone realized she was gone. The nausea hit before her eyes were even open. Calla bolted upright, one hand clamped over her mouth, the other gripping the edge of the bed like it might anchor her to the world. But the wave came anyway, violent, gut-deep, shaking her to the core. She barely made it to the bathroom before she threw up everything inside her. The retching echoed against tile. By the time it stopped, she was on her knees, forehead against cool porcelain, arms wrapped tight around her stomach. Not from pain, from fear, because it wasn't food poisoning. It wasn't nerves. She already knew. A soft knock. She flinched. The door opened gently. No rush, no threat. Darius's voice, low and calm. "Healer's here. She's waiting when you're ready." No questions. No pressure. She hated how much that made her want to cry. 10 minutes later, she sat on the edge of the bed again, wrapped in a clean blanket, staring at a woman with kind eyes and soft hands. The healer said her name was Mira. She asked permission before every touch, spoke in gentle tones like Calla might break if anyone spoke too loud. She ran tests, took vitals, checked bruises. Then she said it. "You're about 6 weeks along." Calla froze. Mira didn't push, didn't fill the silence. Calla blinked once, then again, like the words might rearrange themselves into something less final. 6 weeks. That night, the blood moon, Kellen. Of course, she nodded once. Didn't cry, didn't speak, didn't breathe. Just nodded. Later, she sat alone by the window, blanket tight around her shoulders, heart too loud in the quiet. 6 weeks. That meant there was a heartbeat. Tiny, fragile, real, inside her. She didn't feel strong enough to carry a child. She barely felt human. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't a Luna. She wasn't anything. Just a girl who got rejected, discarded, and left to rot. And now, she was supposed to be a mother? The door creaked. She didn't turn. Darius stood behind her, quiet, still. He waited, gave her space. Then, when the silence stretched too far, he stepped closer. "You're not alone in this," he said. She turned then, slowly, met his gaze. "Why do you care?" she asked, voice raw, honest. "You don't even know me." His jaw tightened, but not in anger. "I know what it's like to be thrown away by the people who should have protected you." That shut her up, because something in his eyes shifted, like pain, but buried, hardened, controlled. Like he'd bled before, maybe still was. He stepped closer. "We'll get you everything you need, medical care, supplies, safety. You don't owe us anything." She blinked. "Us?" "My pack. Me." She didn't thank him. Couldn't. The words got stuck in her throat. But she nodded, and for the first time in months, she believed someone. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hands on her stomach. And for the first time, she didn't feel completely terrified, just uncertain, and maybe a little bit less alone. Across the border, Silver Ridge patrols howled into the wind. They were searching now, but it was too late. She wasn't theirs anymore. The scent of fresh bread pulled her from sleep. Not smoke, not blood, bread. Calla blinked into soft morning light, confused by the silence. There were no orders being shouted, no footsteps rushing to drag her from bed. Just warmth. She sat up slowly. Her muscles still ached, but they weren't screaming. Her body wasn't in fight mode. Not yet, at least. Her first thought was that it was a dream. But dreams didn't come with fresh clothes folded at the end of the bed, or a note that simply read, "Come when you're ready. No one will touch your plate until you do. D." Downstairs, voices hummed. Not loud, not sharp, just normal. She hovered in the doorway of the Blackstone dining hall, half expecting someone to yell at her. No one did. In fact, one of the warriors, broad, scarred, terrifying, actually smiled at her. She almost ran. Darius stood at the far end of the room, talking quietly with an older wolf Calla didn't recognize. But he looked up the second she entered, not like she was a threat. Not like she was a burden, just saw her. His voice didn't rise. He didn't announce her presence. He simply pulled out a chair beside him. Calla sat stiffly, fork clenched, heart racing, eyes down. "Eat," he said gently. "It's okay." She took one bite, and then another, and then she realized she hadn't tasted real food in weeks. Not scraps, not cold leftovers, not rationed crumbs, actual food. Something inside her cracked again. Not pain this time, not trauma, relief. Later, the healer brought her outside to walk the pack grounds. There were pups chasing each other between the trees, warriors laughing, wolves shifting mid-run without fear of being punished. No collars, no iron, no cages. A small girl, maybe 10, ran up to her with a flower crown. "Here," she said, cheeks flushed. "I made it for the pretty lady." Calla didn't move, didn't reach, but the girl gently placed it on her head, beaming, then ran off like it was the most normal thing in the world. Calla just stood there, crying, silent, unseen, until Darius stepped beside her. "She's the Gamma's daughter," he said quietly. "Her name's Elin. She doesn't give flowers to just anyone." Calla wiped her face, ashamed. He didn't comment on the tears, didn't look away either. That night, Calla sat on the porch of the healer's cabin, wrapped in a blanket, watching stars she hadn't seen in years. Her hand rested on her stomach. The moon hung full and bright above the trees. Not the blood moon. This one felt different, gentler. For the first time since she crossed the border, she didn't feel hunted. She didn't feel like prey. She didn't even feel like the girl who had been rejected and dragged through dirt like garbage. She just felt still. Inside, Darius watched her from the window. Not as a leader, not as a savior, just as a man who couldn't stop wondering who she really was underneath all that silence, and how much light might be left in her if someone simply let her breathe. It started in her chest. A sudden pull. Not soft, not warm, violent. Like a hook behind her ribs had been yanked hard from the inside. Calla gasped, clutching her shirt. Her knees hit the ground outside the healer's cottage before she even knew she'd fallen. The pain rolled in, sharp, deep, wrong. Her wolf cried out. A wave of heat swept through her, but it wasn't hers, it wasn't his either. It was the bond. Still there, still alive, still punishing her. She curled forward, panting, shaking, nails clawing into the dirt as her spine arched from the pressure. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't escape it. "Calla!" Darius's voice cut through the haze. Then hands, strong, grounding, wrapped around her shoulders. He didn't lift her. He didn't rush. He just stayed there, solid, real. Her voice cracked. "He's with someone else." It wasn't a guess. She felt it. His pleasure, his dominance, the possessiveness through a bond she'd been rejected from, but never released. It burned. Every cell in her body screamed from the inside out. "It hurts," she choked out. "Even after what he did, it still hurts." Darius didn't ask how. Didn't make her explain what no one should have to. Instead, he said, "The tie should have broken after he rejected you. If it didn't, he's holding on." She blinked through the pain. "He can do that?" "Yes," Darius said quietly. "If he's strong enough, or cruel enough." Another wave hit. Calla doubled over, biting back a scream. Darius grabbed her hand, tight. "I'm going to help you," he said. "We'll weaken it, bit by bit, until it snaps." Back inside, Mira burned sage and drew ancient runes in chalk around the bed. Darius paced behind her, a low growl in his chest. Not at her, at him. Calla lay flat, arms at her sides, lips cracked from holding back sound. Her body shook, sweat beaded at her collarbone. It was worse than the rejection, because this wasn't clean. This was Kellen marking another, and dragging her through it. "Drink this," Mira said softly, holding out a bowl of bitter liquid. "It won't sever the bond, but it'll shield you from the pain." Calla swallowed every drop, even as it burned her throat raw. The next few hours blurred. Dreams, flashes. Kellen's hands on someone else. Kellen's smirk. Kellen's breath in her ear. "You'll never be free." Her wolf whined, retreating, wounded and lost. By dawn, the potion had dulled the worst of it, but the ache lingered, not just in her body, in her soul. She sat on the edge of the bed, knees drawn up, blanket over her shoulders, staring at nothing. "I hate that I still feel him," she whispered. Darius sat across the room, silent, watching, steady. "You will for a while," he said, "but not forever." She looked at him then, tired, raw, barely holding it together. "You sound sure." His jaw clenched. "Because I've been where you are." That silence stretched again. Not cold, not awkward, just real. And Calla held his gaze for a breath longer than she meant to. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Somewhere in Silveridge, Kellen smiled over a woman that wasn't her. But he didn't know she'd survived the pain. Didn't know she'd held on through the bond. Didn't know she wasn't done yet. She was on her knees again. But this time, not from pain. Calla crouched beside the Blackstone pup's training pit, guiding a boy barely 6 through his stance. His feet were wrong, his arms shaky. But he listened. He listened. Because for once, someone saw her as more than broken. The sun was high, her hands were dirty, and she didn't flinch when he smiled up at her. Not long ago, the sound of a laugh would have set her on edge. Now she almost smiled back. Almost. She still woke up shaking some nights. Still waited for blows that never came. Still heard Kellen's voice in the quiet, but lately it was fainter. And the bond? Still there, but thinning, like a string stretched too tight. Calla stood, brushing dust from her jeans, watching the pups run wild. Their joy didn't scare her like it used to. She still felt like a stranger here, but not an intruder. Later, she helped Mira in the kitchen, chopping, stirring, folding dough. Her fingers remembered more than she thought. Her mother used to hum when she cooked. Calla didn't hum, but she worked in rhythm. And when Mira smiled at the taste of her soup, it lit something inside her she thought was gone. That night, she stood outside Darius's house, a lantern in one hand, a box of bread in the other. She wasn't sure why she'd come. She just had. He opened the door before she knocked. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his hair messy. He looked tired, but when he saw her, he stilled. "I made too much," she said, holding up the bread. "Thought you might want some." He stepped aside, said nothing. But the way he looked at her made her forget how to breathe. She sat at his table. They didn't speak much. She ate. He worked on some maps. The silence wasn't empty. It felt lived in. When he finally looked up, he didn't ask how she was. He just said, "You seem stronger." Her fingers tightened on her cup. "I don't feel it," she admitted. "You don't have to yet." When she got up to leave, he walked her to the porch. "You're doing more than surviving now," he said. She didn't answer, but as she walked away, hand resting on her stomach, she realized something. She believed him. Later, alone in her room, she lay in bed and felt it. A flutter. Small. Barely there. Not pain. Not fear, a kick. Her baby. Alive. She laughed. Quiet. Disbelieving. It wasn't loud. It wasn't long. But it was hers. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel cursed. She felt chosen. Not by the goddess. Not by fate. But by something quieter. Deeper. The part of her that hadn't died after all. She smelled them before she saw them. Metal, sweat, Silveridge blood, It hit her like a warning across the wind. Calla dropped the basket of herbs she'd just picked and went still, fingers frozen mid-reach. Her wolf growled low inside her, sharp, alert, ready to run. Something was wrong. She turned toward the eastern tree line. The pack border. Too quiet. Too still. Even the birds had gone silent. Then came the howls. Distant. Familiar. Wrong. She backed away from the trees, heart slamming against her ribs. She knew that sound. Silveridge scouts. She ran. Fast. Branches tore at her arms. Her lungs burned. Her steps were wild, uneven. Her body wasn't built for speed anymore. Not now. Not this far along. But she didn't stop. By the time she reached the edge of the main pack grounds, Darius was already there. His eyes were glowing. His wolves armed. Every warrior in Blackstone stood like a wall behind him. He turned when he saw her, and for the first time since she arrived, he looked furious. Not at her. For her. "They've crossed the outer line," he said, voice low, clipped. "They're probing, trying to see how close they can get." Her throat tightened. "They know?" He nodded once. "They know you're alive." His gaze dropped briefly to her stomach. "And they know you're not alone." The weight of it dropped into her gut. The rejection hadn't ended anything. Kellen had let her go. But he hadn't let go of the idea of owning her. "They won't take you," Darius said. It wasn't a promise. It was a vow. She wanted to believe him. But deep down, something old and trembling whispered otherwise. Kellen wasn't just cruel. He was calculating. And if he'd found her once, he'd find her again. Later that night, she stood at the edge of the property, watching the tree line. The wind shifted again, brushing through her hair like fingers. And with it came the sound she feared most. Not a howl, not a scream, a voice. Distant, but unmistakable. Kellen's. Calla. Just her name. Nothing more. But it was enough. Her wolf whimpered. Her stomach turned. And for the first time in weeks, her body remembered what terror felt like. She turned back toward the house. But the echo followed her. Not from the forest. From inside her blood. She doubled over mid-step. Sharp, sudden, blinding. Her breath caught. Her hands slammed against the stone wall to steady herself, but her knees still buckled. A snap echoed through her lower back. Not from the world outside. From inside her. The pain hit again. Worse. Deeper. Lower. Hot. Wrong. Then, warmth. Wet. Spreading fast. Her eyes went wide. She looked down. Blood. And water. No. No, no. Not now. "Darius!" she screamed. Her voice cracked the quiet like thunder. The world spun. Her vision blurred. Her hands trembled as she reached for the wall again, but missed. She hit the ground hard. Footsteps. Boots pounding. Shouts behind her. Then hands. 2 sets. Lifting her from both sides. Darius's voice was in her ear. "I've got you. I've got you. Stay with me, Calla." She couldn't. She couldn't breathe. Her whole body seized again. Tight, burning, like a steel cord pulling her apart from the inside out. The contractions were seconds apart. No warning. No ramp-up. It was happening. Now. "She's early," Mira said, frantic, ripping open her medical bag. "Too early." "No!" Calla gasped. "It's him. He's close." She didn't have to say the name. They all knew. Kellen. The old mate bond flared without mercy, violent, involuntary, like a wound torn open mid-heel. She felt it. The possessiveness. The claim. As if he could sense it. Her labor. her fear, her vulnerability, and he was feeding off it. "No," Darius growled, his voice shifting deeper, rougher, alpha breaking through. "She's not his." Mira moved fast. The room was spinning with noise, with hands, with panic. Calla lay on the table, teeth clenched so hard she thought they'd crack. Her legs trembled. Her wolf fought, but the pain kept coming. "I can't," she gasped. "I can't do this." "You can," Darius said, kneeling beside her, hand gripping hers. "Look at me." She did, barely. His eyes weren't gold anymore. They were black with fury. But not at her. For her. "You're stronger than him," he said. "Stronger than the pain. You've already survived worse." She sobbed, breath ragged, body convulsing. "Push," Mira commanded. The pressure shifted. Her body gave in. She screamed. Everything went white. Then, another snap. But this one wasn't hers. It was the bond. Tearing. Kellen's hold. Shattered. Silence. Then, a cry. Sharp. Tiny. Alive. "Calla," Mira whispered. "You did it." She couldn't move. Couldn't see. Couldn't speak. But she heard it. Her child. Her pup. Breathing. Darius stood over them, his face unreadable. Hands covered in blood, but his shoulders dropped with relief. Mira handed him the baby, swaddled, red-faced, loud. "Boy," she said softly. He looked down at the pup, then back at Calla. "You're not his anymore," Darius said, voice low. "You never were." Calla's body was still shaking, but her soul? Still. Then, outside, another howl. Not from Blackstone. Silver Ridge. They'd reached the border. She drifted between worlds. Pain still echoed in her spine. Her limbs trembled. Her body felt hollow and too full all at once. But there was warmth on her chest. Small. Breathing. Her son. His heartbeat thudded softly against her skin. Fast. Alive. She opened her eyes. The room was dim. Shadows danced along the walls from a fire nearby. And beside her, silent, still, sat Darius. He hadn't left. Not once. Her throat was dry. Her lips cracked. But she managed the word. "Is he safe?" Darius nodded. "He's strong, loud. Took 3 warriors to cut the cord because your wolf didn't want to let go." She tried to smile. Failed. He handed her water instead. She drank slowly. Her hand shook. "I felt him," she said. "Kellen. During the birth." Darius's jaw tensed. "He tried to claim you. Through the bond. While you were giving life." He looked at her like he couldn't believe the cruelty of it. Like it disgusted him. It did her, too. "He can't reach you now," he added. "The healer and I... we finished the ritual." Her chest tightened. "You did it?" "Yes." A pause. Then, "I severed his bond with you." The silence after that was sharp. Not heavy, not awkward, just final, like a door had closed behind her for good. "Do you feel it?" he asked. She did. Her body ached. But the constant tug, the ghost pain, the shadow of someone else's pleasure in her blood. Gone. She let out a shaky breath. For the first time in too long, she was free inside her own skin. Her son whimpered. She soothed him instinctively, fingers running gently over the soft down of his hair. "What did you name him?" Darius asked. "I haven't," she whispered. He nodded once. Didn't push. "I don't want another alpha to decide that," she added. Darius's eyes held hers. "I'm not here to take anything from you." She studied his face. There was strength there, but not the kind that conquered, the kind that held, the kind that protected, the kind that waited until you were ready. "I didn't expect you to do it," she said after a while. "The ritual. I know." "So why did you?" His voice was soft. "Because the moment you collapsed in my arms, I knew I'd do whatever it took to make sure you never had to feel owned again." Calla swallowed the lump in her throat. Her body still hurt. But her heart? It wasn't bleeding the way it had before. Outside, the night was quiet. No howls, no threats, just the slow, steady rhythm of her baby's breathing, and a man beside her who hadn't touched her once without her permission. "You should sleep," he said. She nodded, but her hand reached out, just slightly, just enough, and he took it, not to pull, not to hold her down, just to let her know. She wasn't alone anymore. She didn't knock. She didn't need to. His door was already open. Calla stepped inside, barefoot, the pup pressed tight against her chest in a sling Mira had wrapped that morning. Darius looked up from the papers on his desk. Mid-sentence. Stopped. Stood. Said nothing. She crossed the room slowly. Not like prey. Not like she used to move. Quiet. Small. Invisible. She moved like someone who finally understood she had the right to be seen. "He won't sleep unless I'm upright," she said softly, settling into the chair across from him. Darius nodded. "Pups do that." She adjusted the sling, the baby shifting with a soft sigh. Then silence again. But not empty, not strained, just full of everything unspoken. "I keep waiting to fall apart," she said after a long pause. Darius leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "But you haven't," he said. "Not yet. You won't." The fire popped between them. The baby sighed. Wind moved outside the cabin. She looked at him carefully. No command in his body, no pressure, no claim. But still, presence. "I don't know what this is," she said quietly. He didn't pretend to, but he answered anyway. "It's not a bond. It's not a ritual. It's not a title." He leaned forward just enough for her to feel it in her chest. "It's me, choosing you, without strings." She blinked, looked down at her son's face, soft, asleep, whole. Her voice was fragile. "I don't want to belong to anyone ever again." "You don't," he said, "but you're welcome to stay." It landed somewhere deep inside her, somewhere quieter than her thoughts. It didn't demand, it didn't pull, it simply offered. She stood, walked to him, stopped just inches away. "I don't need saving," she whispered. "I know." Her fingers brushed his. No sparks, no fate, no magic, just warmth, just breath, just two people who survived the worst and still had something left to give. She pressed her forehead to his, and for once, she didn't flinch, didn't brace for pain, didn't wait for rejection. Because this wasn't a mate bond, it wasn't fate, it was choice. The scent hit first, ash, sweat, silver. Calla froze halfway through feeding her son. Outside, the wind shifted, and the howls came. Not distant, not a warning. Here. She stood without thinking, clutching the baby to her chest. Her heart thundered. The front door slammed open. Mira's voice, low, urgent. "They're at the border. Silveridge. He's with them. She didn't need the name. Her bones already knew. Kellen. By the time she reached the hill overlooking the forest line, the pack was assembled. Wolves in formation, warriors tense. Darius at the front, still as stone. And across the field, emerging from the trees like he owned the world, Kellen. He hadn't changed. Same arrogant shoulders, same smirk that made her stomach twist. But his eyes. They found her instantly. And there it was. That pull. That toxic, lingering residue of a bond he thought still existed. Her grip tightened on her child. She didn't shake, didn't flinch, didn't drop her eyes. Darius spoke first. "You've broken treaty. You cross this land again, I won't ask questions next time." Kellen stepped forward, arrogant, smiling. "I'm not here for war," he said. "Just to collect what's mine." His eyes slid to her, then to the baby. Darius didn't move, but the entire Blackstone pack surged behind him, like the earth itself braced to snap. "She doesn't belong to you," Darius said, voice low. Kellen's smile widened. "That's not what the bond says. It's broken. Not from my side." Then Calla stepped forward. Silence dropped like thunder. She moved slow, deliberate, every step into open ground a challenge. When she reached Darius's side, she turned her back on Kellen completely and handed the child to Mira behind her. Then she faced the alpha who'd rejected her, the man who'd left her bleeding, the one who let her almost die, the one who now thought he could take. "No ritual, no title, no bloodline will ever tie me to you again," she said. He blinked, just once. She stepped closer. "You had your chance. You made your choice." Her voice didn't tremble. "Now I make mine." Kellen's expression cracked. Just slightly. And in that sliver of silence, he saw it. The pack behind her, the alpha beside her, the strength in her spine. He laughed once, empty, sharp. "This isn't over." Darius took a single step forward. "Yes." "It is." The tension snapped. Silveridge wolves backed away first. Kellen hesitated, then vanished into the trees, the threat left hanging like a blade in the fog. Calla didn't speak. She stood at the front of her new pack, the wind in her hair, the blood still humming in her chest. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid of what she was. She couldn't sleep, not because she was afraid, but because it was quiet, too quiet. No footsteps outside her door, no chains rattling down the hall, no nightmares waiting in the dark. Calla sat by the window, her son asleep against her chest. The sky was still deep blue, not yet morning. The trees were heavy with fog. The moon hung low, pale and watching. Not the blood moon. This one felt softer. A shape moved across the grass. She didn't flinch, didn't hide. She watched Darius walk toward the healer's porch and stop at the steps. He didn't knock, didn't call out. He just waited. She opened the door and stepped out barefoot, baby still cradled tight against her chest. They stood together, quiet, the kind of silence that asked nothing and gave everything. "He's yours now," she said, eyes on the sky. Darius didn't misunderstand. "You mean his father?" She nodded. Darius's voice was even. "He won't come back, not after what he saw. His pack won't follow him again." "That doesn't mean he's done." "No, but you are." She looked at him then, really looked. There was no pity in his eyes, no fear, no attempt to pull her into something she hadn't asked for. Just space, just a place to stand. I still don't know who I am outside of surviving him, she admitted. You don't have to know yet. I want to. The baby shifted. She pressed her hand gently to his back. When he grows up, I don't want him to only see pain when he looks at me. Darius's voice softened. He won't. I don't want to lead with fear. Then don't. They stood for a long time like that, the fog lifting slowly around them. I think, she whispered, I want to give him a name now. Darius nodded, said nothing, let her speak. Leor, she said. The word was barely a breath. It means light, in the old tongue. Darius repeated it. Leor. She nodded once. It's what I didn't have, and what he will. When the first light touched the trees, she stepped back. But before she left, she turned and said one more thing, something fragile, but fierce. I may never be anyone's Luna, but I'll be his, and that's enough. Inside, she laid Leor down gently, her fingers brushing over his cheek. He didn't stir, just breathed, peaceful, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't surviving anymore. She was becoming. The messenger arrived before dawn, breathless, bleeding, shaking. Calla was already awake. She'd felt it before the knock, that shift in the air, the weight behind the silence. Darius opened the door, but the words were for her. Silveridge has fallen. She didn't speak, just stood still, baby against her chest, arms tight, heart still. She waited. The warrior's voice cracked. They turned on him. Kellen's dead. No roar, no cheer, no relief, just the quiet sound of something old, letting go. Her knees didn't buckle. Her heart didn't race. She only nodded once and whispered, "Good." Later, she walked to the ridge where Blackstone's land ended and Silveridge once threatened. Fog curled through the trees. Ash floated through the wind. No warriors followed her. No one needed to. She stood at the edge of the world she came from, where pain had shaped her, where blood had marked her, where no one had protected the girl who begged to be seen. Now she stood with her child in her arms, alive, whole, and unchosen by fate, but fully chosen by herself. She looked down at Leor, fast asleep against her heart. "You'll never know that place," she whispered. "You'll never beg for love that should be yours by right." Behind her, Darius waited at a distance, not watching, waiting, for whatever she chose next. She walked back slowly, not with fear, not with urgency, just peace. That night, the fire crackled as the Blackstone pack gathered under a full silver moon. No rituals, no rank, no pressure. But they watched her, and they knew. Calla didn't stand before them as Luna, didn't claim power, didn't demand loyalty. She just lifted Leor into the moonlight and whispered a truth the forest would never forget. "I was never made to rule over wolves." Her voice didn't waver. "But I was made to protect one." The pack bowed, not because they were told, but because they saw what she had survived, what she had become, and what would never be taken from her again. In the shadows, the old bloodlines burned to ash, but in her arms, a new one had just begun.